BMW have revealed their new i3, which is the second new class model and takes over from the i4 in the lineup, essentially, even though it's a slightly different body shape. And it brings about the new platform for BMW that we first saw on the iX3, which introduces a number of technological improvements, most notably in terms of range and efficiency, but then also some nice features inside the cabin as well that really take that next step into a digital future for BMW. So we'll have a look at how the specs stack up, the new design of the car as well, which is definitely a lot more pared back compared to the recent BMW models that we've seen in the last few years, where they've had some questionable design elements. So I think a lot of what we see here looks very promising for the future. So starting off first with some of the specs, it has 345 kilowatts of power in its 50X drive trim, which is the entry level trim. We'll probably see a 40 model in the future, maybe an M Sport 60 model as well, and then maybe a full blown i3M in the future too. 645 newton meters of torque, as you would expect, a lot of torque for an electric vehicle. 0 to 100 comes in 4.9 seconds. But the big story here is the range. So they're claiming a range in a WLTP cycle of 900 kilometers, which would be absolutely incredible. If you're in Australia, it basically covered the majority of the Sydney to Melbourne trip, maybe with one stop. Real world range, probably we'll see maybe around that 650 to 700 kilometer mark, seeing how the real world range translated for the i4. But that's still a huge jump up from the i4, which had a claimed range of the late 500s to early 600s, depending on the trim. And the real world range is only really around 400 kilometers or even less if you went with the entry level eDrive 35 model. So this is a huge step up. Definitely puts it near the top of the class, if not the top of the class for this size of vehicle. Potentially the new Volvo ES90, which is a little bit bigger, comes close, but this is definitely looking like it might be the class leader at this stage. Charging, because they've moved on to the 800 volt architecture, brings about some improvements there. So 400 kilowatts DC at peak, and you can achieve roughly 400 kilometers of range in 10 minutes there. In terms of size, it's slightly bigger than the previous generation G23 series in almost every direction, but you wouldn't think it looking at the design of the car. I think because they've really kept the overhangs short on the front and rear, it looks quite compact. But yeah, I think inside you'll definitely see some improvements there in terms of room. We've seen these new technologies in the iX3 as well. So there's new Super Brain, Heart of Joy, that manages basically everything in the car and makes it really easy to update any control functionality via over-the-air updates. Screen technology, you've got the full-length HUD or lower panoramic display that you've seen already on the iX3, now brought to a sedan. It'll be a little bit interesting to see how it affects vision in a lower car compared to the higher riding iX3. But yeah, it'll be, I guess, exciting to see that new technology roll out across the range. I do like that they've made some improvements, at least to that center screen, which is a little bit more angled to the driver, even more so in the iX3, to give it more of that driver focus, which the 3 and 4 series have been known for over the years. Lots of really cool improvements there, but we'll have a look at the design now, which I think overall they've done a pretty good job in terms of reinventing this line of car. So starting off with the front here, you've got this newer class grille, but slightly different to how we've seen it interpreted on the iX3. Here, it's a little bit wider, a little bit thinner. You can definitely see that it doesn't have those retro style nostrils that the iX3 had, which I prefer this layout a little bit more compared to the concept version of this car. They've changed the graphics up a little bit. It had a little bit more of a striking pattern, I suppose, that was extended across the length of the grille, which is not really a grille, it's just for sensors and other safety technology. But here they've tried to bring it back to something that we've been used to maybe in previous years, this wider grille layout, but this is just pure lighting technology as well. Instead of the traditional angel eyes, you've got this new Noah Class A interpretation of it, which is those kind of two lightning bolts almost, even like sort of Peugeot-esque. I wish they had those round angel eye style headlamps. I think that would still be a cool and nice touch, but at least they're trying to pay some sort of homage to the past. At the bottom here, you can see air curtains in the left and right side of the bumper, pretty pared back compared to what we've seen in some other recent BMWs where they've gone a little bit crazy with how they've tried to detail some of the lower bumper elements. I think it's a little bit more classier here and just a little bit more simple and will age probably better as well. You can see how this line here just kind of cuts through, disappears, and then translates nice into this lower section here. So you can see they've really thought about the line flow as well in the bumper. And then you can see this section in the middle here where it rises into the top and up into this valley that they're calling it. This new valley motif is going to be seen across basically all the neoclassic vehicles with the new, they say revised, but very slightly revised BMW roundel here. I think it's a little bit more matte. The font of the BMW logo is a little bit different, but you'd be hard pressed to see it changes unless someone really told you that it had changed. Overall, yeah, look, a very probably restrained front end for recent times in BMW, but I think this will be much appreciated by a lot of BMW fans and maybe some new fans of the brand as well. I think they've done a good job. Obviously, it doesn't make sense to have a real grille here in an electric car, but at least keeping some of that heritage is probably very important for BMW to differentiate it compared to the sea of other electric cars that all look a little bit anonymous. In terms of this hood line here, I think for crash safety reasons, they couldn't really bring it down below that. It's a little bit strange, especially this cut line here that goes down. It would have been nice to make this a little bit more seamless, but yeah, it's a small detail in the grand scheme of things. Moving on to the side view here, it's a real crisp and well done side view in my view. You've got that strong upper shoulder line here near the windows that BMWs have been known for many, many years. And you've got a few other softer lines coming through the center here as well. I do like, compared to the i4 and some of the more recent BMWs, how the shadows, the way the light plays with the lines really complements the car, whereas in the previous generation of BMWs, it sometimes created some weird reflections and didn't really do justice to the design of the vehicle. So I think they've probably thought about that a little bit, realized that it's not just how the car works in perfect lighting. It has to work in all kinds of different lights. So I definitely think it's going to be an improvement there. You can see how the section at the top here, they tried to minimize any kind of rubber inserts here. It's probably taking some inspiration from the flagship Range Rover, which was probably the first vehicle to really go down this route and minimize any kind of chrome or other kind of rubber inserts within this area as well. Love these wheels. These wheels are complicated. I usually like a bit of a simpler 5-spoke design, but I can appreciate the intricacies of this design here, and I still think it looks quite aesthetically appealing. Other electric cars, for range purposes, I think especially Tesla are guilty of this, where it's fully focused on range and not aesthetics, and it comes off like a very cheap looking hubcap. But this looks premium, which as it should for a BMW. I think they've done a good job here overall with the side profile. Got the Hofmeister kink, loud and proud. They've tried to modify this over the years with some weird and different interpretations, which has diluted the crispness of that little kink here, which BMWs have been known for many, many years. And they've just pared it back again. What does it mean to be a BMW? A strong, crisp line, sporty profile, short overhangs, making it look like it's ready to be driven and not putting any kind of superfluous details in the car. So yeah, I love that as well. Roofline is actually a little bit sharper as well. It gives it more of a retro vibe compared to over the last 3-4 generations of BMW sedans, which have been a little bit more curved in that respect. So they're really harking back to the past with this car, which I have to applaud them for. Moving on to the rear, they've made a few changes here compared to the concept version. So definitely the rear lights used to be up over the boot lid here and maybe looked a little bit similar in terms of the lighting signature compared to the new iX3. They've definitely changed that a lot and made it a lot more slimmer here. One of the BMW designers have said that this is to accentuate the width of the car, and also they wanted to really show off their slim lighting technology to show how futuristic and future forward the car is. It works on some angles, like this angle here, probably not so much here. It just looks like there's a lot of space that could be used. I would have preferred that they use something similar to the iX3, but I think it'll grow on us and it won't be too bad. You can see they've tried to keep that L-shaped motif that BMWs have been known for, but they've been a little bit, let's say, restrained in how prominent that L shape is. I think here it's a little bit of an L shape if you could squint a little bit, but yeah, I think they could have maybe just raised this section a little bit more. You can see how this line of the boot lid here, they cover this whole section here and here with lights. I think that would be a true L shape, and I think that would please a lot of BMW fans. Lower section here, it mirrors the front air curtains where you've got a section going up here. Not too bad. I know with the 3 Series facelift or the LCR of the recent generation, it looked a bit strange how far these elements stuck up. I didn't mind it here, and I think the lower section as well of this bumper is pretty fine too. So not a very controversial design actually, but a very crisp and I think a design that will age pretty well. Definitely some elements of 70s, 80s BMWs here, maybe a little bit of a Alfa Romeo 156 as well, especially in this rear three-quarter view. I think that really has a lot of similarities there, which is not a bad car to copy by any stretch. Moving over to the interior now. So very much similar to the BMW iX3 here. You've got that panoramic display that sits at the bottom of the windshield, which isn't really a display at all. It's apparently a projection, but a very high resolution projection there. So instead of having a gauge cluster at the front here, it's moved up the top. You can see they've got that 4-spoke steering wheel. There's also a sports steering wheel, which doesn't have 4, but 3 spokes. I'd probably go for the sports steering wheel there. I love that the center screen is a little bit more accessible compared to the i4 and the previous generation 3 Series, which sat up top here. It's also angled towards the driver, as I mentioned before, so it should be easier to navigate. But yeah, unfortunately, very void of any real physical buttons. Anywhere in the cabin is a hazard switch and potentially the gear shifter here, but really not much. So I wish the climate controls were at least controlled by physical buttons, but it seems like that's the way BMW are heading, with having everything controlled through here and any other display information that might be useful up here. And there's also a heads-up display as well. So having 3 layers of displays here is an interesting choice. We'll have to see how it works in person. I do love, some of the ambient lighting that's used here as well. It's not really shy tech, but it's more subtle compared to in-your-face lighting that you see in Mercedes as well, which really over the top, make it look like a nightclub of sorts. But this, I think, gives it a more of a calmer, relaxing, welcoming feeling, which you want in an executive sedan. Overall, pretty nice design for the interior here. You can see the gear shifter seems to be getting even more minimal as the generations go by. And you've got hazard switch, you've got a couple of aircon controls here, or maybe just one, and some volume controls as well. So few little physical buttons, but really not a lot there to control at all. All right, so let's have a look now at how the car stacks up compared to the previous generation i4. You can see here that compared to the i4, obviously that massive nostril type grille has disappeared. It's got more of that classic BMW design now, which is great. With the door handles, they've gone to this fully flush design, which Chinese regulations are probably going to phase out. So I imagine the LCR we might go back to this design here, but you can see a real absence of any air vents, anything that is superfluous or unnecessary, just fully focused on what's functional for an electric car has been used here compared to the i4, which really has a lot going on in comparison. Side profile, a lot more crisper than the i4. Obviously, it's got a more of a coupe-like profile, which I do like in the i4, but that does compromise space a little bit. But you can see how crisp the lines are here. You see with the reflections here, I've always had a little bit of a strange look with the previous generation, but you can see here, everything just kind of flows as you would expect. I think with the rear, from this angle, it actually does look quite nice. It really depends on the angle. With the rear, it looks quite taut, upright, strong. I think from straight on, it looks a bit odd in some angles, but definitely here, I think this is a very strong rear end. So that's the new generation i3. I think it's going to be a very, very important vehicle for BMW. Probably won't sell quite as well as the iX3, but given that the specs seem to be a class leader and it's got a non-controversial design as well, I think this is going to do really well for BMW. So if you like this video, feel free to subscribe, give it a like, and I'll see you in the next one.